Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Garage Area, which is now in its third different iteration. I think it's come at you first as an extra normal video with random blokes with very spherical heads blethering on about unfunny stuff, and then it was just me waffling in front of a camera, and now it's me waffling in front of a microphone in the form of a podcast. So good to have you along to this for the first of what should be a regular run of weekly podcasts. I'll be doing 2 podcasts a week, one on the real world of NASCAR, if that makes sense, and another later in the week discussing stop motion NASCAR as it is on YouTube. See if we can't get things going again, because as we've discussed, apparently little kids are taking over the stop motions in on YouTube. See if we can take the power back. Anyway, that'll be covered in my podcast later in the week. Let's start with some real world NASCAR antics. And let me start with something that has been bugging me for a few weeks now. Let me just move the microphone. Something's been bugging me a little bit now, and it's become a big problem, particularly in the last few years in NASCAR. Never used to be a problem, but now that a certain Kyle Busch has eclipsed the win mark for Mark Martin in the Nationwide Series, I think it is something I just have to address. You will probably guess what I'm talking about now. It's the issue of Sprint Cup Series regulars running in the Nationwide Series every single week and winning every single goddamn race. Seriously, a few years ago, right, back in ye olde days when it was known as the Busch Series, you may remember it, there were ringers, there were cups, they called them bushwhackers back then. They were the odd cars that ran every now and again. Kevin Harvick enjoyed doing it. Excuse me. But there were 2 key things. One, they were very, very irregular, i.e. they never ran a full season or 30-odd races. They were only around for about 5, 10, 15 at the most. And secondly, they were never in the top equipment. The big teams, for example, Kevin Harvick Incorporated, Richard Childress himself, Joe Gibbs, they always had dedicated cars out there every single week for young drivers coming through the ranks. If they wanted to put a Sprint Cup regular in the Nationwide or Busch Series, they put a different car on that was basically another car for them that they didn't plough all of their resources into. Nowadays, that's very different. There are a good 2 or 3 drivers who just seem to keep doing this. Carl Edwards and Kyle Busch have a serial obsession with running every single Nationwide race possible. And it's really starting to get a little bit frustrating for me, because they run they do both of the things that I just mentioned that the previous drivers did not. Not only do they run nearly all of the races, I think Carl Edwards is running a good 30 plus races this year, they also have generally the best equipment and are denying they are running in the cars that in previous years young drivers coming through the ranks would have. I don't understand it. Hang on, just modify the microphone a bit. But I don't understand it. We get to this frustrating scenario where Nationwide Series drivers in their own series can't win a single race. I mean, seriously, this year, right, there's been, 20, 25 races. I read somewhere there's been about 2 or 3 of those won by Nationwide Series regulars. It's becoming a joke now. And to be fair, you know, NASCAR aren't dragging their heels about this. This is one of those rants where NASCAR are actually trying to do something about it rather than bury their head in the sand. They've already tried fixing it this year by saying you can only run for 1 championship, which is fair enough. But that still hasn't stopped Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick. Those are the 4 serial ones. I mean, there's obviously Marcus Ambrose won at Montreal, and I did cheer him home that time, and Jimmy Johnson guessed it at Watkins Glen. But those were pretty much their only races of the season. They were one-offs. Kyle Busch is out there every single week. There's no other word for it. He's bullying the Nationwide Series. He's bullying the Nationwide regulars by being a better driver. He's already come through that series and been a multiple championship contender and 20-odd race winner in Sprint Cup Series. He's too good for the Nationwide Series. That's the thing. And this is my problem with it. They are essentially bullying the Nationwide Series regulars. It'll be like, for example, a Major League Baseball team dropping down 1 or 2 divisions and playing an entire season in the second or third division. I'm not sure how the divisions work in baseball, but they'll be dropping down 1 or 2 divisions and absolutely slaughtering every single team in the division. Understandable, because they're 2 divisions better. Do you see what I mean here? It's getting to such a stage where the advantage, the performance gap between the two is so obvious, and it's only going to grow and grow when the Nationwide Series regulars, they can't even get their own sponsors because they all just want to sign up. I mean, Kyle Busch has got Z-Line Designs, Norse Energy Drink. He's got tons of sponsors on his Nationwide car. Why not let Michael McDowell or whoever runs on the Joe Gibbs developmental program, let him run that car every week? Not you. You're contending for wins in the Spring Cup. You're contending for a championship. You're the points leader. You've no need to do this. It's a little bit harsh, but I will say, I understand why they like doing it. I mean, Carl Evans, for God's sake, they tried putting races like on the other side of the country, like the Nationwide Series race would be on the West Coast, and then the Spring Cup Series race would be on the East Coast, or vice versa. And Carl Evans would still do both races. I mean, this guy is just a fanatic for doing it. But the solution has to be that these guys just can't be allowed to run more than 10 races. It's got to stop, because not only are the Nationwide Series is losing credibility very swiftly, and it's happening in the Craftsman trucks. You know, literally this year, whenever a Sprint Cup regular has stepped his ass into a truck, namely it's Kevin Harvick, they've won every single time, pretty much. And it's getting beyond the joke now. And what I would propose is, you know, because things obviously aren't going to go back to the old days. Obviously, the teams, I do understand. Apparently, I have heard Brad Keselowski is another one who does a lot of the races. What I have heard is that this year, sponsor contracts have had to be fulfilled. Apparently, that's the story. Brad Keselowski has said that apparently, I don't know, Discount Tire or whatever it is, wanted him to do a lot of the races to fulfill a sponsor agreement or something like that. And he's apparently said he's going to cut back his nationwide program next year. So that's understandable. But if these guys aren't, if Kyle Busch, for example, isn't going to be shifted, and the problem is, you know, this is why nobody, I mean, NASCAR was up in arms, the NASCAR.com there was a big fanfare, where he surpassed Mark Martin's win mark. Brilliant. When did most of those wins come? Several years after he broke through in Sprint Cup. He broke through in Sprint Cup in about 2005, 2006, or maybe 2007. That's when I guess 2007, 2008 was when he really became a title contender in the Sprint Cup. When most of his wins in Nationwide have come since then. Do you not see what I'm getting at here? He's a championship contender for the top level. Why does he have to drop down a level and just bully? Is it an ego boost? Does he get some sort of ego kick out of winning every week? I mean, it's fair enough. I get why they like to run in this division, but I do think the solution should be, well, this is my idea anyway, that in the same way that they have to fill out a registration form saying which championship they'll run for in a year, they will say, for example, on Kyle Busch's registration form for next year, there'll be 3 boxes saying Sprint Cup, Nationwide, Craftsman Truck. He will obviously tick Sprint Cup as the championship he'll run for points in. Now, in the other 2 series, he should be allowed to have a total of about 5 or 10 races between them to say, I'm going to run at that Nationwide race, that truck race, a maximum of 10 between the 2 series, so 5 each, or 10 in one and none in the other, and that's it. No more than 10 races in either, because it is becoming a bit of a joke now. Years ago, the Busch Series really had an identity. The Sprint Cup guys were the cameos. They were just like, oh, look, he's doing quite well in a guest appearance. But they were a sideshow to the main event, which was a titanic battle for the title in their own right. You know, for the last few years, a Nationwide regular really hasn't done anything in the Nationwide Series because they've not had the chance. Justin Allgaier's development's not really gone anywhere. Trevor Bain's been a little bit stunted. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., those cars are struggling for sponsors. And yet Carl Edwards' car's out there with a sponsor every week. You know, and one of the defences they use is that it brings in sponsors, it brings in crowds. You can look up the crowd and attendances for the Nationwide Series races. The handful of races or so where there were no Sprint Cup regulars, or not very many, guesting, the attendances were equal, if not higher. The Nationwide Series has its own hardcore fans in its own right, just like the Truck Series does. And the Truck Series has stood on its own 2 feet for years, being a great mix of ex-Sprint Cup veterans and up-and-coming rookies. I mean, it's been great, but now it's getting compromised. It's just like a sideshow for, like, the big kids in the Sprint Cup to go around like stealing everyone's lunch money in the lower leagues. It's getting bad. So I would definitely say to take steps towards, because otherwise they're not going to stop on their own, and otherwise it's going to badly stunt the development of young drivers and strip the series of any identity they have. It's just going to be some random series where guys who can't win the championship in Sprint Cup just parade around and dominate. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I just realised I've managed to waste 10 minutes ranting on one subject, and I'm aware I've not even got to any analysis on this weekend's race, which was the Irwin Tools Night Race. I seriously cannot comprehend how crap a name that is for a night race in NASCAR. NASCAR only races at night for about a third of the entire schedule. Why did they feel the need to call one race the night race? Irwin... Anyway, this is wow, it's the night race. As somebody quipped the other day, what happens if it's delayed by rain? Will it be the Irwin Tools Monday afternoon race? Anyway, the winner of the Irwin Tools Night Race, because it was run at night, do you see what they did there, was Brad Keselowski, who's on a bit of a hot streak at the moment in the Blue Deuce. He's actually doing really well. He's stormed to another victory. Sadly, I wasn't able to watch this one, the place that I normally watch the NASCAR. I think actually I don't think I could watch it because I was busy, and the broadcast was on at like midnight my time. So, but I have been able to watch highlights of it, and a few things struck me. Firstly, the race itself, the actual racing at Bristol was actually pretty good. Let me tell you where I stand on the Bristol repaving. It's shite. I believe they have totally ruined the soul of the old track. It had unique character with being single lane. It's the essence of sport of short track racing. Tight conditions, you got to get in there, maybe a bit of paint rubbing, paint swapping, whatever. But that was the whole point of it. That's why people loved it. It was a unique track with its own personal character. And then they put that progressive banking in, which may work at a place like, I don't know, Dover. Do they have progressive banking at Dover? I think they do, yeah. May work at a place like that. But Bristol is now just a mini Dover, essentially. And, I mean, I remember watching, I think it was the 2009 Food City 500, and I was there sitting there for hours. They just went through, like, 250 laps with nothing happening. It was just, I couldn't believe how tedious it was. It was like, where's the character? I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want it to be a wreck fest. I mean, sometimes at Bristol it did get tedious. It was like, oh, we're going green. Oh, no, someone's spun. Oh, no, we're going green. Oh, no, someone's crashed. Oh, no, we're going... Oh, about 5 people crashed on the front straight. So it would get a bit tedious. But there was at least some scrapping for position. Nowadays, it's just... Guys running side by side. Well, so what's different in Michigan? In fact, that it's a quarter of the length. Or something, you know. But last night, it wasn't mono groove, but it did seem to be that the inside line was much faster. And there was a bit of scrapping for position and on the track, and it was starting to get back up with some of its old sparkle. So what I want to put out to you, anyone who watched it live, because I'm only going on the highlights, and you can always dress things up to look better than they were with a 5-minute highlight reel, or a 10-minute highlight reel. Those of you who watched the race live, what did you think of it? And do you disagree with me? Do you think it's actually improved the racing? Or am I just being some old fart who, you know, whatever? Do you think it's actually improved things? I want to hear from you. And, well, the race itself, like I say, it did look quite entertaining. It was, from the highlights reel, it did look like there were a few people who could win it. Surprisingly, Kyle Busch didn't seem to be that much of a factor, which surprised me a bit, seeing as he was going after Darren Waltrip's record, and NASCAR.com apparently said that he could, you know, blah, blah, blah. But we all know that NASCAR.com do have a bit of a love-in for him. Yeah, I did just accuse NASCAR.com of being biased for a driver. Sue me. Anyway, back to Brad Keselowski. He's won his second race in about the last month, I think. He's really been on... He's been absolutely on fire. I bet Penske Racing, by next year, he's going to come back like at the start of the season and go, oh, my ankle's fixed now. And Roger Penske's just going to take a hammer to it and break it again. To be like, well, you seem to drive better when your ankle's broken. I don't know if it's fixed up now, but he just seems to have been on fire. I mean, he won at... He did win... Oh, yeah, Pocono. That's it, sorry. Pocono. He finished second at Watkins Glen. He did pretty well at Michigan, I think, for the periods of that race where I wasn't asleep. And obviously he won last night, so he's actually on fire and doing pretty well. I'm going to set something straight on the line now. You're not going to hear me talking about the chase or wildcards or speculating. David Carviello, or whatever his name is, and the millions of myriad bloggers on NASCAR.com do enough speculation to last a friggin' lifetime. So you're not going to hear me waffling on about, ooh, he might be good for the chase. Ooh, no, he might not be so good. Ooh, can he get the wildcard spot? Ooh, tense. Disregarding the fact that this is manufactured tension to make up for the fact that the chase is total bollocks, and there's no good reason for them not to revert back to the old system of awarding the champion awarding the championship to the best guy over all 36 races. Anyway, that's my stance on the issue firmly out there. But anyway, you can't deny that Brad Keselowski is actually looking pretty good at the moment. So what I want to know, what I want to hear from you guys about is he now, could he potentially be a legitimate title challenger? Nobody's said as such, and it's generally regarded that the last few people who just sneak into the chase are generally there for a good reason, and they don't suddenly charge forward and win the championship. Obviously, they've never heard of Jimmy Johnson. But do you think he could be a serious title contender? Or does anyone else? Basically what I'm saying is, who do you think can usurp Jimmy Johnson? Because somebody has to. And with some of the people that are on fire these last few weeks, what do we think? Jimmy Johnson has been apparently not as impervious, not as invincible this year. He's been whining about panicking. I mean, Kurt Busch drove quite close to his car and he started moaning at him for that. So he's either got this divine right that he either thinks in his mind that he's got this divine right for people just to pull over because he's 5-time Jimmy Johnson or whatever, or he's actually getting nervous. He's like, hang on, I'm genuinely not like a shoo-in to walk away with it when the chase starts. Do you know what I mean? So I want to hear from you. What alternatives, who do you think can usurp him from his crown? And finally, I've just about gone through, well, no, actually, I've got a preview of Atlanta, but just before then, a fleeting mention for Danica Patrick. She's finally confirmed that she's going full-time in Nationwide, queuing and shooing media storm, yada yada, blah, blah, blah. What I'm least looking forward to the most about Danica Patrick next year in Nationwide isn't the fact that she's racing herself, fair enough, she's giving it a good crack, but the maelstrom of media attention. When she made her debut in the Nationwide at Daytona last year, I think it was utterly ridiculous. The ESPN cameras would literally, I think it was ESPN or whatever was broadcasting the race, would literally, oh, there's a great battle for the lead going on here, but oh, let's cut to Danica Patrick. Let's check in with Danica. Let's see how she's doing. Oh, she's running 32nd at the moment. That's not too bad. Oh, somebody's flipped on the back straightaway, but no one cares. It's on fire, but no one cares. Because Danica's still doing a pretty good job. Oh no, she's spun! Oh my god, she's spun! Oh my god, she's spun! It's not anything. Oh my god. She's a lap down. All the friggin' time. I mean, literally, it's like... I even heard her say somewhere that even she's sick of the media outcry. So, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for the viewers next year. Not the fact that she's racing, but the fact that the media do have a massive love-in with her. Because, you know, she's a rather attractive lady. But that's about as much as I'm going to say on the matter. I'll probably dedicate a future podcast to more discussion about Danica Patrick. What I finally want to do this week is have a brief look-forward preview to Atlanta, which is one of my favourite tracks on the schedule. And it's one that not even NASCAR has been able to screw up with its COT or any resurfacing or anything. And it still remains one of the best on the schedule. So I'm very much hyped for this race. And obviously we know that it's the penultimate race before the cut-off race at Richmond for the chase. So a lot of guys are going to be going really hard for this one. And to be honest, there's a few... what I'll basically be doing on this series is picking out two drivers, my picks to win, if you like, and then a third, which could be a wild card. So my two picks to win this one will be, probably going quite conservative, but Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch, who are the two winners of last year's races. They're both very strong there, and Kurt Busch will be helped on by the fact that Penske Racing's on a real high because of Brad Kes running really strongly at the moment. My wild card, Bobby Labonte. And I don't think I really need to explain why, because Bobby Labonte in previous seasons, when he was running really well and winning championships, he made Atlanta his second home, basically. He was the man at Atlanta. And this year he's got a half-decent car in the 47. He's doing pretty well. in a full season for the team, and you know what, he could be in with a chance. He could be up there contending. He has a lot of experience at the track. I'm saying, just keep one eye on him. I think he could spring a massive upset. I want to hear your predictions for the race. What do you think is going to happen? How do you think it's going to go? And that's about it from me for this week, from us at Team Bomber Sports, for this first episode of the Garage Area podcast. We'll be back later in the week for I'm not sure what the stop motion podcast will be called, but it'll have some sort of fancy name by then. But until then, stay safe, and I want to hear from you on the topics I've discussed today. Let me know, and yeah, stay safe and have a nice week.